Hello, and welcome back to Movie Husbands. Today we are reviewing Wrath of Man. Director Guy Ritchie reunites with Jason Statham in Wrath of Man. The main character H begins work at a security company. He is laconic, cold, and mysterious. Slowly, his past and true intentions are revealed with violent consequences. So, Jeffrey, what did you think of Wrath of Man?
So I think I have to back up a little bit and just talk about Guy Ritchie. So for me, Guy Ritchie is this director that he's almost kind of like Weezer. Like Weezer made these two great albums that they've never been able to get out of the shadow of early in their career. That's kind of how I feel about Guy Ritchie. I love his first two films, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch. They were these movies that were kind of made in the post-Pulp Fiction era where people were making all of these kind of crime caper movies that were kind of fun and had dark humor. And I don't know, those films really burst on the screen, or they really burst onto the scene actually, and just, I don't think changed film, but they were just part of a moment and they kind of had this cult following for a long time, and that's how I saw them. So I've always had such great affection for those films, and after the first two films of his, I don't know, I just haven't felt a lot of what he's done. He's become this kind of big name action director. I like Sherlock Holmes. I like some of his other movies like The Man from U.N.C.L.E. There's a whole lot of stuff in there that I'm just kind of like, you know, where was the guy who made Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels? I will say I liked Wrath of Man. Did not love it, but I liked it. I mean, I think it's the most I've liked a Guy Ritchie movie in quite a while, maybe 10 years.
I completely agree with you. I'm pretty much right on the same page as you, as we have been lately. But I did really like this movie, but I didn't love it. I think in terms of the positives, I love the way this movie was shot. I thought that was really cool. Not really unique. It's kind of similar in Guy Ritchie's style and fashion a little bit. But I did really like how the story was kind of split up and you kind of jumping in between these different timelines. And I love that because you kind of learn these reveals. There's these moments that you go back in time and you learn something about his character or why he is all of a sudden killing all these people. And he's got like this little hit list. So I thought that was really cool. It wasn't anything that was unique or it's stuff that's been done before. This is a story that's been regurgitated before, but it was enjoyable. And also, just to put it in perspective, this was our first time being back in the movie theater in 16 months. And just for that aspect alone, from a movie standpoint, it was just so cool to hear the drums like hitting the bass in the movie theater and the sound all around you, especially in such a movie like this when it's just a lot of action.
It's interesting, the violence in this movie is more that kind of short, quick, to the point brutality kind of violence than the elongated action sequences. We kind of get one big one towards the end that's kind of this big shootout, but not a lot of it is like execution type, just like quick, brutal, in and out kind of violence. I want to go back to the structure a bit of the plot structure. I think that this movie really benefited from it. And I think that Guy Ritchie, this is like really a stylistic choice of his. This is something he does a lot in his films. The first two films that I mentioned are also known for this. It almost like teases you with like, okay, not much is going on. This character is pretty uninteresting. Jason Statham is playing this really close to the chest. And then once you kind of see what's really going on, I think it plays to its benefit.
Yeah, and in a sense, that's where it did kind of divert itself from the norm. We can't really spoil it because you go back in time and you find out why he is motivated to kill these people and he has this hit list. Yeah. And so I'm not going to go further than that, but that motivation has been told before. And the good thing about this movie is that since it did build the plot that way, it made it different and it made it unique in that sense. So that's what made the movie enjoyable to me. Otherwise, it would have been like every other revenge movie.
But I do think that there's more care put into the way this film is shot than many action films. It's not going to win an Oscar or anything, but you can tell that they're going for something stylistic at least, and that is a cut above many action films.
Definitely. And I think when you mentioned kind of the violence in this movie, I did like how they didn't really spend too much time on it. Like when a character dies, they're just kind of passed with like a passing thought. They're just dead. And you spend a little time with them through the movie and then you kind of feel like, oh, it's kind of sad that they died, but also like the movie doesn't treat it as if they mattered at all. So yeah, it's very interesting. But I kind of like that because it wasn't dragged out and it was kind of final like that kind of violence is. It's final.
Yeah.
And you just have to move forward because events just kind of pile on top of each other. You don't have time to deal with the death. And I hate when movies do that, when like somebody dies and then you're sitting with the person for like the 5 minutes and they're losing their consciousness. It's like so drawn out to make it so dramatic. And this movie is not concerned with that at all.
Yeah, there's actually two like fairly large characters that die towards the end that we don't even see them fall over or anything. Like, and many other movies would have this kind of slow motion thing where they're like falling back, and yeah, there's none of that, which I like. The movie just like, I don't know, it doesn't waste your time with sentimentality. That's another thing I kind of liked about it, is something we say on the channel a lot, is that a movie is taking itself too seriously and it's hard to enjoy. This movie's taking itself really seriously and it has no sense of humor, but it actually didn't bother me. There was something it added to like the badassery, so to speak. I think Jason Statham's character and the style of the film really worked, and the score is kind of like droney and just hard edged and sounds like really clangy. So I think it worked, actually, that somber style.
And going away from all this, in terms of like a negative, the one thing I did not like about this movie was the writing.
Bad.
I think
Sorry. No, you're right. It's so wooden.
The writing of this movie is so it's so fake.
Yeah.
Especially in the beginning. I think the writing does somehow, it feels better as the movie progresses, and maybe that's because events kind of pick up pace, and so things are being said faster, and I think that dialogue, it just jumps into another line and it feels more fluid. But in particular in the beginning of the movie, it's written so poorly. It's like guys get in this van where they're passing the money along and they're talking, they're having a conversation, and this conversation couldn't feel more forced. Like, it feels so bad. It didn't feel like a real conversation that two people are having.
I agree. Outside of the plot structure, I don't think there's a lot of intelligence to the writing.
It sounded like somebody who had no concept of what it was like to work a blue-collar job writing what dialogue would be between two men working a blue-collar job.
I think Jason Statham is good in this movie, good in terms of like he just kind of has to be a badass and that's it. But if you go back and you watch his performances in Guy Ritchie's first movies, which is his first, I think, on-screen performance, he's just so much more dynamic and fun, and he just has this palpable energy that I think he's really losing as an actor. I don't know. He's leaning so hard into this badass thing, that this kind of like monotone, scary, intimidating character, that I miss the old Jason Statham.
I mean, that's an interesting conversation, because is that really just the direction he likes going? Is that like the type he likes to be? Or is he being kind of typecast in Hollywood? That seems like for the past 10 or 15 years or so, all of his movies, the character has been pretty similar. He's just been a badass, and he kind of has one monotone type of personality about him.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's just, that would be very interesting to know if that's like something he's interested in being, like he likes doing that. I mean, props to him if that's what he wants to do. And then the other thing is whether maybe he's bothered by that a little bit and he's being typecast by Hollywood and he could only get roles that kind of fit that bill.
So you ready to go to grades?
Yeah, I'm ready to go to grades. I give this movie a B-. Definitely better than average for me, but also the negatives, the drawbacks, the writing was kind of pulled me out of the movie at times. But otherwise, I had a really good time. It was a fun time.
I agree. I actually also give it a B-.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's fun. I probably won't remember this movie in a couple years. I think there's a couple things to admire about it, and yeah, that's about it.
All right, and that's it for our review of Wrath of Man. Wrath of Man is currently in theaters, and if you enjoyed this video, we hope you give it a like, and we'll see you next time.